you are watching the news from Kazakhstan. I'm Marina Kima, and these are the top stories. Activists of unregistered party Alga demand the authorities to stop the persecution of their leader Vladimir Kozlov and launch an investigation against the president's son-in-law Timur Kulibayev. Authorities award officials who contributed to the organization of the OSCE summit in Astana. Military court found the former defense vice minister guilty in the case of faulty Israeli military equipment supplied to Kazakh army. Kazakh authorities are still celebrating what they see as a success of the OSCE summit in Astana. Some of the organization's member states question this position. Nevertheless, officials who contributed to the organization and holding of the event are still awarded medals and cash prizes.
The head of state and interior minister praised the personnel of the Internal Affairs Department for their efforts during the OSCE summit. The summit in Astana is seen as a diplomatic victory for Kazakhstan, while most participants see it as a failure. Nevertheless, the host is celebrating a victory and hands out awards. I felt good that the guests from around the world could safely move around town without worrying about incidents or terrorist acts. This is a substantial achievement for the Kazakh police. The police leadership was promoted for seemingly obvious functional responsibilities, with the lower staff awarded with bonuses and offenders fined. Senator Gani Kasimov went even further and proposed to award diplomats who contributed to the triumph with land plots. Our country is now wealthy and we have enough land. Others can't afford that, but we can. This will be a good incentive, not some award or a medal of distinction, but an interest-free loan for 25 years. The president's political advisor sees nothing wrong with the incentives and encouragements. Just like his boss, he calls the OSCE summit in Astana a political triumph of Kazakhstan. The administration is not concerned about the reverse opinion expressed by the opposition and some of the OSCE member states. There are people who want to belittle the summit's role. Even if all conflicts were resolved, they would say they hoped for a war. This is the only way I understand my opponents. While the leadership of the country is living through the side effects of the victorious euphoria, the ordinary officials are happy about their bonuses and look forward to other important events. Fortunately, the chairmanship in the organization of Islamic Conference is coming up soon.
The opposition is preparing for two protest actions, one in support of Vladimir Kozlov, the leader of unregistered party Alga, who is accused of evading taxes by the financial police, and the other calling the Kazakh prosecutor general to launch an investigation against the president's son-in-law, Timur Kulibayev.
The Prosecutor General's Office and the Anti-Corruption Council of the ruling party Nuratan do not react in any way to the criminal investigation launched in Switzerland against Kazakh president's son-in-law. Timur Kulibayev is accused of laundering $600 million. Last week, concerned citizens sent an appeal to the Prosecutor General, while on Monday, activists of the party Alga attempted to draw the attention of the MPs in Astana. The Kazakh government supervising organizations and especially the anti-corruption agency must take action. In fact, the person under the investigation should be restricted in his state service access. There are a lot of talks about Dovlyazov and the former mayor Kharpunov, who allegedly transferred enormous amounts of money abroad. Yet everyone is quiet about Timur Kulibayev. Members of Alga hope that their letters will reach intended destinations and not follow the fate of appeals sent in spring. Then the ex-banker Mukhtar Ablyazov released exposing data about Kulibayev's illegal oil deals with Chinese companies, as well as tax evasion. However, the MPs and the authorities ignored the information. I believe the problem is not the lack of interest in the subject, but rather it is a taboo. We learned much when Mukhtar Ablyazov sent over a lot of real documents with original stamps as evidence of Timur Kulibayev, one of the top managers of the country and the son-in-law of President Nazarbayev, is selling off property of Kazakhstan. Activists insist that by ignoring the situation, the state shows its prejudice. The president's son-in-law is untouchable, while the leader of Alga is under constant persecution for trivial accusations of tax evasion. Vladimir Kozlov's supporters have no doubts the oppositionist is right and are ready to stand by him. Until the situation got out of hand, we want to see some resonance and draw the attention of all civil rights advocates. The authorities just want to put him behind the bars. Alga is now planning to set up a committee for protection of Vladimir Kozlov. On December 23rd, party members will picket offices of Nuratan and city administrations in several regions of the country at once to attract wider public attention to what they call a political persecution.
Representatives of Kaznet freedom movement say the authorities are trying to isolate citizens of the country from the objective information. Because of that, activists even proposed to disband the Information and Communication Ministry. This way, the public organization responded to the recent initiative of the minister to regulate foreign media in Kazakhstan.
Activists of Kaznet freedom movement say the new initiative of the Communication Ministry will eliminate cable and satellite broadcasting in the country. They believe channels expressing unfavorable for the government views will not be given licenses, while leading news agencies will not register at all to avoid following the repression norms of the Kazakh mass media legislation. They also mentioned some kind of registration, which implies that media companies will have to follow Kazakh legislation, including our inadequate laws on media, advertising, protection of privacy, leader of the nation, etc., where even a single wrong word could mean the end of registration. Who would want that? Russian NTV? Even Russian state channels do not need that. The talks of the new order for cable and satellite broadcasting began last Friday after Senator Tolygen Muhamedjanov expressed his disappointment in that some TV channels broadcasting abroad give negative coverage of the events in Kazakhstan. K+ was cited as an example.
Будучи за рубежом, в гостинице можно посмотреть, знаете, какой канал? K+.
While staying in a hotel abroad, you can watch K+. It is not clear who founded this channel, but it broadcasts a very different, negative coverage of all processes happening in our country. The senator asked the Information and Communication Minister Askar Jumangaliyev to take some measures in relation to channels like that. Surprisingly, the official already had a prepared response. At the moment, the ministry is developing a bill on TV and radio broadcasting, which will include the norms regulating the activity of local and foreign media. The bill will specify the rules for the way they should follow the law. Right now, we have no rules or appropriate regimes for foreign media. Interestingly, these debates led to wide public reaction. Media advocates recalled that the government was able to pass the recent law on Kazakh internet silently, and now they do not want to give the authorities another chance. Activists of Kaznet freedom movement say the new initiative is politicized and is not aimed at the development of local content at all.
Я слышала сама уже от коллег, от людей, которые уже обсуждают вовсю этот законопроект.
I've heard from my colleagues who actively discuss the bill that perhaps this law is created for just one specific channel, namely K+, which broadcasts interesting programs and views unfavorable for the authorities. The head of the Freedom of Speech Protection Fund, Tamara Kaleva, says that officially the bill is not ready yet. However, the population should be alert about it, while there is still a chance to change something. It seems that everything that goes against the grain should be eliminated. Why don't they bring back jammers and Iron Curtain in the form of registration? There are many ways for them to do that. The authorities know how to use pretty wrappers for bad stuffing when dealing with legislation. If everything will go the way they want, and if the public will not intervene, perhaps the world will laugh at once again. Unfortunately, it will laugh at our tears. In their open appeal, activists of Kaznet freedom movement asked for a clarification why citizens of the country really need the Information Ministry. In the US, for instance, the First Amendment is enough to guarantee the freedom of speech.
On Monday, Democratic Party Akjol asked the parliament to make the December 13th the day of commemorating the historic government of Alash Orda, seen by many observers as the first contemporary democratic government of Kazakhstan.
The first Kurultai, or National Council of Kazakhs, was held on December 13, 1917, followed by the creation of the Alash Orda Autonomous Region, seen by many as a claim for the restoration of a Kazakh state, awaited by Kazakh people for centuries. Saying the population should learn its history, the leader of the Democratic Party, Alikhan Baymenov, proposed the government to officially recognize December 13 as Alash Orda Day and open Alash Orda Alley in Astana, which will feature monuments to prominent figures of the time. We hope that we will be heard because public opinion will gradually support the initiative. The government will implement our ideas as it often does, if there is an evident long-term benefit.
To the other news, no Kazakh citizens are reported among injured and arrested in the Saturday's clashes in Moscow, said Foreign Ministry representatives during a meeting on Monday.
There are no Kazakh citizens among the injured or detained. Last weekend, several thousand people gathered at Moscow's Manet Square to commemorate Spartak football fan Igor Sviridov, killed on December 6. The protest soon turned into clashes with the police. According to the latest information, 32 people were injured, including natives of North Caucasus, beaten by the mob. Moscow police believes the disorders were caused by a provocation of radical nationalistic groups, whose members led the crowd of football fans. Independent Russian media doubts the assumption. We have nothing to say yet. The official information will be published on the website after the situation will be clear.
Kazakh military personnel are going to Afghanistan. The surprising revelation was made by none other than the U.S. State Secretary Hillary Clinton during her walking trip to Bishkek last week. During previous talks, it was agreed Kazakhstan will be represented in Kabul with a peacemaking unit, but now Washington is talking specifically about military forces. Local experts say the change happened due to a simple trade-off during the recent summit.
Kazakhstan found itself in the epicenter of an Afghan conflict, said the U.S. State Secretary Hillary Clinton last week while visiting Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, with a working trip. Kazakhstan has commitment to reinforce the international forces in Afghanistan with military advisors and engineers. The decision of the Kazakh government means that the international security assistance forces in Afghanistan will now include troops from 49 countries. The news surprised nearly everyone. Prior to the OSCE summit in Astana, the authorities already talked about the Kazakh contingent in the coalition HQ, but only as part of the peacekeeping mission, not Kazakh engineers working at Afghan minefields. Experts say that the country with a predominantly Muslim population openly providing NATO support, Kazakhstan might face the risk of becoming a terrorist target. In the sense of combat readiness, it is important for our peacekeeping forces to undergo practical training and gain experience. However, I think that trouble spots like Iraq and Afghanistan are not the best places for these kinds of exercises. Apparently, the decision was not discussed in the Kazakh parliament, perhaps since this might be only a preliminary agreement, note experts. At the same time, the matter was mentioned by the U.S. State Secretary herself. Thus, Clinton should have some serious grounds to do so. Most likely, in exchange for bringing a high-profile U.S. delegation to the summit in Astana, the authorities agreed backstage to send a small number of specialists to Afghanistan. Specialists are confident that the White House strives to ensure a broader coalition in Afghanistan. However, the U.S. risks are much lower compared to Kazakhstan. After all, Astana is much closer to Kabul than Washington.
The former defense vice minister will have to compensate the state for almost $100 million spent on faulty Israeli weapons bought for Kazakh army. The court in Astana spread the amount among the 3 defendants who already served various prison terms.
On December 13th, the Astana court sentenced former defense vice minister Kazamurat Mayrmanov and his 2 accomplices to a total of 29 years of imprisonment and a fine of $93 million for purchasing faulty Israeli military equipment for Kazakh army. The court established that Shenkman acted criminally together with Mayrmanov and Zhartynov under common criminal intent. Therefore, according to the Article 932 of the Kazakh Criminal Code, Mayrmanov and Zhartynov will be jointly liable for inflicted damages. 24 servicemen also involved in the case were fined $1,000 each for the inflicted material damage. The interests of the state suffered enormous damage by the wrongful actions of the defendants, and we believe this court's decision is reasonable and legit. According to lawyers making monthly payments of $8,500, Mayrmanov, Zhartynov and Shenkman will need 900 years to repay their damage to the state. The court is bound by invisible threads to the rules and procedures of criminal code that regulate the jurisdiction principle. Thus, if there is a guilty verdict, the person is considered guilty a priori. The property of the convicted citizens of Kazakhstan was confiscated during the first secret court verdict. The defense has 15 days to appeal the court decision.
Leadership of the infamous customs checkpoint Horgas at the Kazakh-Chinese border invited journalists for a press tour to improve their recently damaged image. The former customs broker Kanagat Takeyeva, who publicly accused the administration of extortion and bribery, now says her family is pressured by crime bosses. Takeyeva's problems began in November when she talked to the press about corruption in Horgas and then asked for the personal intervention of President Nazarbayev.
It is impossible to live in the country where crime goes hand in hand with law enforcement agencies. In November, customs broker Kanagat Takeva exposed corruption practices in place at the Kazakh-Chinese customs checkpoint Khorgos. Now she is concerned for the well-being of her family after being contacted by crime bosses. This shows that the authorities and criminal groups drive people to the point where they no longer have a choice. You either accept their conditions or die. This is what I've been told for the last 2 days. In the meantime, the leadership of the Almaty Customs Department held a Khorgos press tour for loyal media outlets. Journalists were shown the environment and equipment and were also told about honesty and transparency of the customs work. Takeva, however, claims that just 1 day of illegal operation here brings at least $3 million. In response, the administration says that the modern equipment prevents the corruption. Right from the entrance, we have an electronic checkpoint which practically eliminates the human factor. The gate will not open until all data is collected by the electric reader. All vehicles entering the customs territory are under control and everything is transferred online to the operations center in Astana. About a month ago, Takeva exposed some of corruption practices used at checkpoint Khorgos. Officials immediately responded with accusations of fraud and slander. An investigation at the checkpoint is currently underway with the head of Khorgos temporarily suspended. The financial police is also involved in the investigation and even proposed to give Takeva personal security. The woman, though, doesn't trust state organizations and plans to make a public appeal to the population of the country.
Kazakh government guarantees 3 of the country's oil refineries will switch to Euro 5 by 2014. National company Kazmunaygas now also supports the initiative of officials. In the meantime, Kazakh experts are still skeptical about the idea and say the rush is in no way linked to the environment concerns.
Kazakh refineries will be able to produce Euro 5 fuel by 2014, said on Monday representatives of the national company Kazmunaygas, encouraged by consultants from Chevron Lummus Global. Practice shows that it takes about 4 years after the signing of the catalyst licensing contract, which launches the process of full and detailed designs and then purchase and installation of equipment. This is not the first press conference in support of new fuel standards. The promotion of Euro 5 began last week with preparation of Auto Business Association speaking on behalf of major dealers. We're very glad about it and we're just waiting for the appearance of good quality fuel in Kazakhstan. It is expected that Kazakh refineries will use the system of double hydrocracking used by only a handful of transnational companies like Exxon, Shell and Chevron. Right now, the Chevron's experts just give consultations. However, the Safety and Environment Managing Director of Exploration and Production Kazmunaygas Serik Baymukhanbetov believes the transnational giant has all the chances to become the major contractor of local refineries. There's no smoke without fire. No auctions have been held yet, but the authorities already say they have a very good candidate for Euro 5 production. The researchers do not approve the technological jump from currently used Euro 2 to Euro 5. Before it happens, some control over the fuel pricing along the entire chain from producers to gas stations must appear in place. Then the income of the population should be raised and the bank's credit policies liberalized. This is needed to make the purchase of cars compatible with Euro 5 more accessible. In addition, heating stations will have to switch from fuel oil residue to something else.
These were all the news for now. Join us tomorrow for more. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.